of modern-day astronomy is comets. Comets make no sense for this reason. They come from all over the place. In a linear universe, when, you know, the great ball of a primordial cloud of dust and gas swirling around flattens out into a pancake to make the solar system, that's the ecliptic. Everything formed in the ecliptic should be in the ecliptic. Nothing should be out of the ecliptic, and yet comets come from all over the place. So they had to be removed out to where they are some kind of way, but we don't have any idea. So they come up with this fantastic thing called the Oort cloud, which is so far away you can't imagine. The Oort cloud is one of the biggest jokes out there. And that's how they explain comets, because they can't explain them any other way. But the problem with comets is they have water in them. And anything out in space is not going to produce water. You produce water by being a cooling planet with lava spewing up the steam and stuff like that, and it condenses, etc. So comets have to begin in a planet.
Welcome. Yes, my name's Ian Wright, and I was going to tell you something about these things. These are comets. And you've already heard that the theme of this evening is about life, and what I want to do is explain to you my interest in what we can understand about life from studying things like comets. And I hope this almost doesn't need any introduction. This is a fairly iconic image of the comet 67P that we're going to as part of the Rosetta mission, and I think you can imagine that a bit of a scary looking object, really, not quite what we had in mind. I'll probably be referring it to as 67P, but its full name is Churyumov-Gerasimenko. And I want you to just bear in mind that the image of this thing, this object, which we call the cometary nucleus, because I'm sure if any of you have been lucky enough to see comets, or you've seen pictures of them or whatever, you've seen something like this, which is a body with a nice long tail that can be visible in the night sky. You'll never actually see one that looks like this with the naked eye. You need a long exposure on it, but that's what they look like. And I want to illustrate how long that tail is. And to do that, I'm going to take a geological map of the British Isles, and I'm going to superimpose on that in inverted colours now, the comet's tail running from Land's End to John O'Groats. I was a bit nervous when I first put this together because you know, there was a fear that that bit at the top might belong to a different country by the time I go. So bear that in mind. Imagine that comet tail goes all the way across the British Isles. Then the object that's making all that stuff is about that size. In fact, that's an exaggeration. It's more like that size. And that is a shape model there of 67P. And if you're interested, that's the ESA project scientist and the lander manager having some fun at the comet arrival press conference. So think about that. You've got something that big that's making that huge tail. The huge tail you can see from Earth.
The biblical flood was 40 days and 40 nights of torrential rain. And
right, and that makes sense too, because the plasma discharges would cause rain, wouldn't they, in your theory?
Well, the comet tail, we passed 40 days and 40 nights. I figured that, for example, if we, as planet Earth, passed through the tail of comet Hale-Bopp, which was a possibility, right. Just say that the orbital situation was correct, we would have spent about 35 days in the comet tail. And then it would have rained,
wow.
We'd had torrential rains, the naphtha, the rain of brimstone and fire. And so, at any rate, the Noah's flood is very realistic. We passed through the tail of a big comet, 40 days and 40 nights. And
yeah.
Gee, how did Noah know this was going to happen? How did he know to build a boat? Well, because someone back there had the knowledge to know that this thing was coming, and he built his boat out in the middle of nowhere, and people were laughing at him.
Right.
You know,
he was building in a desert area.
So think about that. You've got something that big that's making that huge tail. The huge tail you can see from Earth. But in actual fact, what we're interested in doing is going and finding out what it is that's making that tail. And that is quite a small object that actually is about something like 3 or 4 kilometers across in actual size. As I say, the theme is, what is life? No, the theme is life. And so I thought I'd introduce my talk by kind of, tackling the question, what is life? And I'll start by showing that. Some of you might recognize that. This was a feature that was found in a Martian meteorite almost 20 years ago that was at the time interpreted as a biological fossil. So this was evidence for life on Mars. 20 years later, I can tell you that minds are very definitely made up, but opinions are still divided. So after all that time, with the world's experts looking at this, we still can't agree on exactly what that thing is. So that shows that it's a difficult issue.
What do you need for a planetary body to be habitable, to be suitable for life? I mean, do you think you need an atmosphere? Do you need to have oxygen? Do you need liquid water? Do you need sunlight? Do you need a source of energy? Which of those do you think are essential requirements for life? Well, here's what I think. You don't need an atmosphere. You don't need organisms breathing oxygen. We do, as far as we know, need liquid water. It's a wonderful solvent. All cells depend on water and so on. So you need temperature where liquid water is going to be available. Sunlight, plants depend on sunlight. No plants, we'd starve. Well, fine, but there are ecosystems on the Earth which don't need sunlight. You do need an energy source, some kind of chemical gradient that life can grab hold of and use for its metabolism. That's all you need. You need water and an energy source, fundamentally, for life. And we do have water. And we do have energy sources inside certain moons, which is why moons are good candidates for life. And here's an environment on Earth. It's the floor of the deep ocean. This column here being built up by chemicals precipitating is a metre or so long. And this is the plume of turbid water with precipitates forming in it. These are black smokers on the deep ocean floors. And there's white scum around there, which is bacteria. There are few shrimp and crabs and things scavenging around, feeding on the bacteria. There's a whole ecosystem down there that's independent of sunlight. And this is a favoured environment for where life on Earth could have first begun. Ian showed a picture of kind of volcanic springs at the solid atmosphere interface, but put an ocean in between, you're protected from horrible ultraviolet sunlight or other kinds of harmful radiation, and you can start forming life even when the Earth is still being bombarded by quite a lot of meteorites if you're down the bottom of the ocean. And if you look at the phylogenetics of life on Earth, the last common ancestor we can find is an organism that lives in hot environments like this and doesn't breathe oxygen either. So this is a good setting for life to begin on the Earth, and we've got settings like that, we think, inside various icy bodies. So if life could begin on the Earth, it could begin inside these icy bodies. So these are called, there's chemical energy there at the interface, and these things are called hydrothermal vents. Mars today, bone dry, a few trickles of water coming out now and then, but the surface is certainly pretty hostile for life. It's bathed in UV radiation. There might be things underground if you dig for them, but it's worth looking for life on Mars, don't get me wrong.
Everything formed in the ecliptic should be in the ecliptic. Nothing should be out of the ecliptic, and yet comets come from all over the place. So they had to be removed out to where they are some kind of way, but we don't have any idea. So they come up with this fantastic thing called the Oort cloud, which is so far away you can't imagine. The Oort cloud is one of the biggest jokes out there. And that's how they explain comets, because they can't explain them any other way. But the problem with comets is they have water in them. And anything out in space is not going to produce water. You produce water by being a cooling planet with lava spewing up the steam and stuff like that, and it condenses, etc. So comets have to begin in a planet.
Where are all the strange meteors are coming from? They all hail from the asteroid belt, but not from a single location in the asteroid belt, said Bill Cook of the Meteoroid Environment Office at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. There is no common source for these fireballs, which is puzzling. There have been 5 or 6 notable fireballs that might have dropped meteorites around the United States alone. Germany and Japan have also had notable sightings. February 1st, a meteor lit up the skies over central Texas, putting on a dazzling show for people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It was extremely bright and took 8 seconds to cross the sky, said eyewitness Darren Moore. I could see the fireball start to slow down, then it exploded like a firecracker artillery shell into several pieces, flickered a few more times, and then slowly burned out. As bright as the full moon, the fireball was spotted by NASA cameras in New Mexico, more than 500 miles, 805 kilometers, away. It was likely caused by an object 3 to 6 feet, 1 to 2 meters, wide, NASA researchers said. These fireballs are particularly slow in penetrating, meteor expert Peter Brown, a physics professor at the University of Western Ontario, said in a statement. They hit the top of the atmosphere moving slower than 15 kilometers per second, 33,500 miles per hour, decelerate rapidly and make it to within 50 kilometers, 31 miles, of Earth's surface. And the meteors have kept coming. My question is, what is knocking our asteroid belt around out there?
Family saw him. It did not last more than 8 or 9 seconds, and then disappeared, said a spokesman by Sussex County, Delaware. Frankly, I did not think too much about it, he says, but became concerned when he published it in the web of the local media. Triggered the rapid and overwhelming. That was just the tip of the iceberg of what was going to happen that night. Throughout Friday night, every few seconds a message appeared on Twitter from someone who had seen the meteor. Some of the messages were from the cities of New York and Washington.
Dabu 7, we've had a huge fireball over Oregon today. The news here is reporting that multiple people got shots of this and sent in pictures, and they wasn't sure exactly what this object was. This first shot, I mean, I'm not sure if we're looking at chemtrails here or what, and there's a streak here, but there's an object right here in the frame, and I'm not sure what this is. If this is what they were seeing, there's no trail off of it. There's no smoke. There's no nothing. And that is way too large to be a bird. For a bird to look like that, it had to be somewhere up here in this tree line, somewhere up in this area, not way out there like that. I mean, I guess it could be a possibility, but I'm not sure if that's the object they're talking about or not. When looking at the other pics, it is clear this is the fireball that they are talking about. This pic is similar to the other, but there's nothing up here. This is a very good shot here. Almost pyramid type structure as it comes crashing down to Earth. Almost pyramid type structure. See it once again there, and again here. So very interesting indeed. Fireball over Oregon in the shape of a pyramid. I'll leave links as always.
Space is not going to produce water. You produce water by being a cooling planet with lava spewing up the steam and stuff like that, and it condenses, etc. So comets have to begin in a planet. Now, this explains it, I think, plausibly well. Nothing that they will throw at you to explain comets will do it. All right. Number 2, the other great mystery, the asteroid belt. What they say is that the inner viscous magma inside Tiamat in the collision was strung out the bowels of the planet. The guts were ripped out and strung out and broke into little pieces. That's the asteroid belt. They called it the hammered bracelet. We call it the asteroid belt. But there it is. And that's a fairly plausible explanation for it. Again, this doesn't make sense because, as you heard, the exploded planet theory. Problem is, when a planet explodes, it ought to just go boom everywhere. It shouldn't be hanging around. Doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. Okay, now, the third one is Pluto. Pluto's a problem because It's, as you've all been hearing lately, they're trying to downgrade it. It doesn't belong. It doesn't fit. It has an orbit that's not like the others. It carries inside the orbit of Neptune, and it's 17 degrees off the ecliptic. Again, nothing should be off the ecliptic. What they say is that Nibiru, as it swung around, it pulled Pluto away from Saturn, its original home, and dropped it out where it is now. Now, all astronomers know Pluto is not a natural planet. It started life as a moon of an inner planet. They know that. But they have no idea how it could have gotten moved out to where it is. Here you go. Here's a reasonable answer right here. Now, let's talk about Earth. Three great mysteries here. Life. Well, first of all, let's establish that Earth is a remnant of this. What happens is Nibiru's moon bangs into the remnant of Tiamat, and like pool balls, boop, hitting, knocks it inside the orbit of Mars, and it reestablishes there and becomes the Earth, the remnant of Tiamat. Now, Earth has one great mystery is life. How did life come to be? Life appears, despite what you're told about the lightning bolt into the primordial soup and all that, forget it. That's just a joke. That's just a fantasy fairy tale to tell people that don't want to know the truth and to tell kids in school. That's what they're teaching to this day. We know very well that the first forms of life to appear on Earth appear suddenly. They're very sophisticated bacteria, prokaryotic bacteria, and there's not one, there's two kinds, and they appear at around 4 billion years ago. Suddenly, overnight, strata with two kinds, sophisticated bacteria, relative to what that first living form would have been. Waters, Nibiru passed life to Tiamat, to the remnant of Tiamat. Perfect explanation for the sudden appearance of two sophisticated life forms on the remnant. Now, the remnant now is over here with its moon Kingu, and has gone over, and now we're looking at two major differences in Earth and all other astral bodies out there. Earth is missing a huge portion of its crust, and it has plate tectonics, movement in the plates. How could that happen? No explanation. Why? Because in the vacuum, any liquid in a vacuum, what does it do? You see it in the space shuttle all the time. They let orange juice or milk. It makes the smallest, tightest ball it can make. That is what a liquid does in a vacuum. Smallest, tightest ball it can make. Now, that is what all the other astral bodies have done. They don't have plate tectonics. There's nowhere for the plates to go. They're as tight as they can be. Where do plate tectonics come from? In the collision, the backside of Tiamat is cracked like an eggshell. Cracked like an eggshell. There are the plates. There are the plates. And when the missing crust, of course, is when the half is there. It's still viscous. It's still magma. So what's it going to do? It's going to tighten itself down into a new ball, much smaller than the old one had been. And what's going to happen? It's going to have a big chunk gone, a big missing piece of itself, a big hole in itself, in its skin. And so that scar is going to break up into pieces as the plates move around, and we have the plate tectonics and we have the missing surface that we know about today. Next slide, please. And we'll take a look at just a representation of what it looks like with the water gone. Not to scale, of course, but you get the idea. This is not like any other planet or moon out there. Something happened. And I think the Enuma Elish gives a plausible explanation for what that was and for all the other things that I mentioned as well. Next slide. Now, when the dust settled, here's what we had. The solar system as we know it today, with Nibiru moving in this clockwise 3,600-year orbit. And I say it passes outside the orbit of Mars, inside the inner edge of the asteroid belt. And the last time through, I think, was around 200 BC, which means it's just past aphelion out here, and it's going to be back around 3400 AD, about 1400 years. We don't have to worry about it if I'm right. You will get arguments about these dates. Some people use textual interpretations. I use the date of the ending of the Ice Age, which I believe was caused by Nibiru passing through and lifting the tides. You can read about why I think that in the book. And I use the dating of the ice cores and the tree rings of science. I try to make my work as scientifically based as I can because I expect someday to be able to go toe-to-toe with those guys, and I want to be able to do it on their turf in their terms. Okay? So, next slide. All right. This is some of the proof for that story that you've just heard, and it starts with cylinder seals. And I just want you to see what a cylinder seal is. there are about 5,000 of these that we have. They were their printing press. It was just a thing they would roll out on the clay to leave little pictures like this. Now, when they had a story to tell, they told it in the tablets like you saw. But when they had an event that everybody would know the event, like I showed you that cartoon, and everybody here, we all knew in a very small space that was talking about millions of words and thousands of volumes about evolution. Am I right? We all knew. Well, they would all know this was the story of the time the gods or whoever gave the water to the water buffalo or whatever. The point is, notice the fine detail in the best of the cylinder seals, and then realize that these are basically 2 to 3 inches high. They're like big spools of thread. Made out of precious and semi-precious stone, carved in a circular format so that they roll out flat and three-dimensionally. Now, when asked how this was done, science says, well, they could only have bored little holes into the rock and then abraded them out like they, to the degree that they wanted. Well, the sand would be bigger than the holes you need to do this, some of this work anyway. There's just no way. Lasers, this is not even an inch square here. Lasers would have a hard time doing this if they could do it. Nobody knows how they did this. They're just pulling one out of the hat on you. Okay, next slide. This is the one I want you to see. This is a much older one, much more worn, as you can see. 4,500 years, 4,500 years, 2,500 BC. It's called it's VA 243. It's in a museum in Berlin. It's well dated. And it's called the Granting of the Plow. This is a seated God. See him in his chair with a plow in his hand. And this is a standing God, and this is a human. How do we know they're gods? Because they have horns on their helmets. Horns on their helmets. Notice the horns. This is how you signify gods, or they did anyway, the Sumerians did on their cylinder seals. And I want you to pay special attention to this because later at the banquet we might see a real live Anunnaki helmet. We might see that. Okay, now, normally they would put astronomical signs up here to indicate who the god was because not everybody would know. But in this one, obviously everybody knew. And as you can see, this kind of, the human is carrying this kind of skunky old digging stick that the most primitive people have, even to this day. And this new wooden plow here, 4,500 years ago, we can go to Egypt today and see this very plow, and in many other third world countries still being used, this very plow. Okay, so no question it's the granting of the plow. But this is what makes this special right here. Let's see a blow-up of that. What is this? Solar system, right. Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, in their relative sizes, mind you. Earth, Moon, think how small that is. What grain of sand dug that out? Mars, and then, what should be here? This should be the asteroid belt. This is Nibiru, folks. Nibiru. Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto as a moon of Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Notice that it's only a little bit bigger than Uranus, Neptune. It's about 3 times bigger than Earth. Nibiru is a good-sized planet. Good-sized planet, according to this. Okay? Now, again, what proof do we have of any of this? Let's take some look. Let's take a look at this. All right, here's a look at the solar system that you don't get to very often. And did it occur to any of you that we were looking at a cylinder seal carved at 4,500 years ago that had Uranus in it that we only discovered in 1781 when our telescopes got good enough to see it? It had Neptune, when we discovered in 1846 when our telescopes got good enough to see it, and Pluto, which we discovered in 1930 when our mathematicians got good enough to tell our astronomers where to look for the thing because it was so small. What are the Sumerians doing knowing about that? Furthermore, what are they doing writing in one of their tablets that if you look at these two, Uranus and Neptune, in the heavens, meaning right out on them, they look like blue-green watery twins? When we didn't find that out, we thought they were just big old gas bags like Jupiter and Saturn until Voyager went out there in 86 and 89 and found that, lo and behold, they really are blue-green watery twins. What the Sumerians said 4,500 years ago. Furthermore, they didn't count the way we do. Earth was not the third rock from the sun for them. It was number 7. So that means they were counting from out here and they were putting Pluto in its correct place. What are they doing with all that knowledge? Well, they make no bones about it. They say everything that we know, everything that we are, everything that we have comes from the people living on Nibiru. The people living on Nibiru came to Earth and gave us everything that we have, everything that we know, our great culture. Now, What's the proof of that? Is there any proof that any ancient advanced civilization was ever on Earth at any point in the dim or distant past? Yes, yes. The megalithic structures out there, the pyramids, Tiwanaku, Baalbek, Teotihuacan, Stonehenge, you name it, a couple of dozen of them. All of those are impossible for human beings to recreate today. And yet we are told in another one of these great fantasies that they were somehow created by people in ancient times, ancient Egyptians or ancient Sumerians or anybody. Somehow or other they did it. And it's just absolute malarkey. Impossible. Now, next slide. Some Egyptian scholars tried to prove it by getting down in with some pink granite here and wailing away with some stones for a few hours and tore their hands up and walked out of there saying, well, you know, we couldn't make much of a dent in it, but boy, you know, those old folks, they sure had a lot of time on their hands, and somehow they figured out a way to do it. Wouldn't give an inch after this. Wouldn't give an inch. It's ridiculous. Now, here's the stone they're working on. Next slide. Some of you may have seen this. This is an ancient 1,170-ton obelisk lies unfinished at the Aswan quarry. A crack rendered the stone unusable. It's pink granite. They were making it into an obelisk like the one you saw in Allen's slides. Okay? It's about 100 feet long. It's about 12 feet wide, 12 feet deep on the side. Imagine the Washington Monument, just squared off. And it's pretty much done. But now let's move this from the Stone Age. Let's move it through the age of copper, because copper wouldn't make a dent in that. And let's move it into the Bronze Age. Bronze will chip on it. Bronze will take a little bit of it out. Now, let's put our bronze chisels or hatchets or whatever in the hands of some guys and get them down in this crack and put them to work. How do you think you're going to fare in there? Pretty tight fit. Plastic Man might have a tough time up in there. But the point is, they've got it pretty much done. They're working on the spire here. When they break it, you know how it works. You press here, you get this. Well, look, does this look like somebody chipping away with a little hand? No. This looks like a belt sander taking pieces out the size of the chair you're sitting on. Huge chunks of pink granite, one of the hardest stones in the world, just being ripped out. And they press too hard with whatever machine they've got here, and you know your physics. You get stress back here, and they popped it. They broke it. And they just said, whoops, we busted that one. And they just unhooked it and went somewhere else and left it for us to marvel at and wonder how they could have done it. But now let's go ahead and say they didn't bust it and they finished it. These primitive people now who managed somehow to do this. They finished it. It's ready to go. The hole, by the way, is about 15 feet deep. That's the top of it up there. But still, what's the first thing they've got to do? Somebody's got to draw straws to get down there with his hatchet and cut it loose from the bottom. Now, who's going to do that with 1,100 tons sitting on top of him? We could not get our best diamond-tipped blades to cut through underneath this thing. The weight would stop the blade. We could not, the operative word here is impossible. We could not get this out of here. And yet they did it time and time and time again. To lift it out, just if we could somehow cut it loose, we would have to take a dozen of our largest movable cranes to wring that hole just to get it up. You're being lied to, folks. That's the main thing you got to understand. You're being lied to. It's absolutely impossible for this one stone. This one stone proves that none of the megaliths were made by those people in that era. And this, again, is not the biggest one. They have them in Baalbek twice that big.
Exact same thing again. There's a sky tower. Clear sky. I'll try and zoom as far into it as I can without it being shaky, people. It's on a tripod, but what is that? I lost it again.
It's a pity you've got some of your subscribers coming on so that when they them to
I mean, it's massive. That is big. Because you look at it and away in the distance, and then you bring it to the fore, and it's just... Well, 4th August, we've got it back again. Or 5th August. What's the day's date? 5th August. Same thing, 2 tails. Same position in the sky. Definitely not a plane. Sky tower. And we'll lose it soon underneath the clouds. Tell me that's a plane. That's still there. The tails are facing up and down the way. So I mean that tells you it's not a plane. Look. Look. Here.
Oh aye.
Tell her I'm recording.
Hey, welcome back guys. This video was on 19th of October 2018 somewhere in USA. The video original source the channel name Delta's World. I'm sure guys you love this video. Look at that, a very strange sunset. New planetary coming to the earth, very close to the earth. If you see in the concentration, look at that, definitely 2 suns or something unknown planet near the sun. Look at that, definitely look at that. This is not a lens reflection or something, don't say like that guys. This is a Nibiru Planet X atmosphere seen over USA 19th of October 2018. I'm sure guys you love this video. When I saw this video, I'm really very surprised. Look at that, the color around the sun, bloodish color. So I'm sure guys, if you have any kind of valuable information, please below the comment and press the I button. You can find more interesting videos and like this video. And guys, don't forget to subscribe my channel, like Keen of Geet. Thank you guys. I have completed 1K subscribers. So guys, I have more support. I want to more support of you. Please share my videos and please below the comments and subscribe my channel. Look at that. Definitely has something very strange going on. This video is at least 1 year old. 2 suns or Nibiru or any something, please, up to you. Please below the comment. Hope you love this video. God bless you all.